Peace, peace, my peaceful people. What's good? It's your brother man, and we back. Alright? So, now we are here for a special hexagram. This is hexagram 21, right? Very much associated with law and order, setting things right, things like that. Alright? Not too much chitter chatter, let's get right in. Alright, we're going to start it off without my old mans and see if I do right. Alright, here we go. Hexagram 21, the text. She, whole, biting through. This hexagram represents an open mouth with an instruction in the fourth place between the teeth. As a result, the lips cannot meet. To bring them together, one must bite energetically through the obstacle. Checkle. This hexagram is one of the few hexagrams that says that there is an obstacle exists, that here an obstacle exists which must be removed forcibly. The proper intention of use of force here is spoken about. Force is not necessarily violence. Text. Since the hexagram is made up of the trigrams for thunder and lightning, it indicates how obstacles are forcibly removed in nature. Energetic biting through overcomes the obstacle that prevents joining of the lips. The storm, with its thunder and lightning, overcomes the disturbing tension in nature. Recourse to law and penalties overcomes the disturbances of harmonious social life caused by criminals and slanderers. The theme of this hexagram is a criminal lawsuit, in contradistinction to that of the Sun conflict, or that of Sun conflict, hexagram 6, which refers to civil suits. In the 6th hexagram, we're talking about arbitration. In the 21st hexagram, we're speaking about punishment. Such as if you do so-and-so, we will cut your nose off, your hands off. This is something that I want to speak about. Oh, we on Shechem talking now. Shechem is talking now. In this society, people criticize the fact that a number of people in this community are still engaging in certain incorrect activities and disintegrating behavior, failing to realize that in reality we lack the means to fully using the 21 vehicle. Right? And unfortunately, there are many people who will not yield unless you say to them some kind of punishment will be visited upon them. Some people will not yield to anything less than that. Pure and simple. Our approach to avoiding the kinds of misconduct that have been the 14th hexagram, where we try and win you over by rousing you through the truth and by giving you possessions in great measure as your reward for positive dealings in this society. But 21 is something also that in certain situations can be exercised. For example, somebody here decides that they will start to steal belongings of my fellow men in here. And let's say that we have warned this person. It would not be out of our jurisdiction, having given the person enough warning, that we go and do rituals on them to deliver them from their nasty habits. And I want you to understand these things because many people are very naive about what it takes to accomplish something in life. You have to understand that this society is for people at all different levels of growth. Unfortunately, many wrong elements come in here too and camouflage themselves. Stay here year after year and do a lot of naughty things. The 21st hexagram is an oracular sanction to use. The 21st hexagram is the oracular sanction of the use of punitive measures, because there are some people who will not just yield or change or mend their ways and are doing harm to themselves and to others unless they have some type of punitive measures. You might look at it at a very negative way or whatever. It's no different from when you realize that you need to take the belt off and whack your child on the behind. It is no different from that. There are some people who are adults who are still mentally children and still have to take your belt off and whack them psychically on their behinds, pure and simple. Text. Now I'm talking about to the text. The judgment, biting through has success. It is favorable to let justice be administered. When an obstacle to union arises, energetic biting through brings success. And you'll notice it says an obstacle to union, meaning shekel. And you'll notice that it says an obstacle to union. Meaning in the African and Chinese perception of crime, it is all types of behavior that tends to destroy the union between people, that destroys people's ability to work harmoniously and establish unity of work together. That is why punitive action exists. As I showed in my book, The Oracle of Thought, in the Judgment card there is no such thing as justice in society unless the man who is going to punish has taken all the measures to first enlighten you. When this Western man puts you in jail or takes your life for a crime that you have committed and he has not done everything to enlighten you, to heal you, to keep you healthy, that you may function harmoniously socially, then it is a travesty of justice. But if a man has done everything to make you healthy, to make you, to keep you healthy, to teach you, to uplift you, to help you, so that when you draw the 21st hexagram, then your wrongdoing was your own simple wickedness, and the punishment is justified. But I want you to understand the elements of justice. It is just not simply the carrying out of punishment or whatever, because what happens in jails here is grave injustice in most cases. Text. Whenever unity cannot be established, the obstruction is due to a talebearer and a traitor who is interfering and blocking the way. Check. Again, a metaphor or an example of the kind of things that creates this unity. The kind of crime, the kind of incorrectness, the kinds of person here need not be a talebearer or a traitor. It could be anybody who is doing something that is creating difficulty in the harmony of a situation to the point where the oracle says, we must punish this person because they are not going to listen. That's what it means here. The person could be doing anything, not only tale-bearing or treason. Text. To prevent permanent injury, vigorous measures must be taken at once. Deliberate obstruction of this sort does not vanish on its own accord. Just judgment and punishment are required to deter or obviate it. Second, the person deliberately, they can help themselves, but they deliberately are doing something incorrect. When you draw the 21, beware. It is deliberate misconduct. Text. However, it is important to proceed in the right way. The hexagram combines Li, clarity, and Chin, excitement. Li is yielding, Chin is hard. Unqualified hardness and excitement would be too violent in meting out punishment. Unqualified clarity and gentleness would be too weak. The two together create just measure. It is of moment that the man who makes the decisions, representing the fifth line, is gentle by nature, while he commands respect by his conduct and in his position. Okay, not too much commentary. The image, thunder and lightning, the image of biting through. Thus, the kings of former times made firm the laws through through clearly defining penalties. Penalties are the individual applications of the law. The law specifies the penalties. Clarity prevails when the mind clarity prevails when the mild and severe penalties are clearly differentiated according to the nature of the crimes. Shekel. That is not to say that everybody is committing a crime. You have to differentiate. Know how to scale and learn to distinguish what crimes should be punished in a very strong way or in a mild way. Text. The law is strengthened by just application of penalties. This is symbolized by the terror of thunder. This clarity and severity have the effect of instilling respect. It is not that the penalties are ends in themselves. The obstruction of the social life of man increase when there is a lack of clarity and penal codes and lack of clarity in the penal codes and slackness in executing it. We're running back. The obstructions in the social life of man increase when there is a lack of clarity in the penal codes and the slackness in executing them. Check. This is very devastating when you consider what is happening here in the United States. Okay, to the lines. Line 1, text. The only way to strengthen the law is to make it clear and to make penalties certain and swift. 9 in the beginning. His feet. Oh, okay, I did the wrong thing, right? I have my 1, have kind of a big 1. My big 1 kind of overlapped the last sentence of the last paragraph, right? All right, so now we're in line 1, okay? 9 at the beginning means his feet are fastened in the stocks so that the toes disappear, no blame. If a sentence is imposed the first time a man attempts to do wrong, the penalty is a mild one. Only the toes are put into the stocks. This prevents him from sinning further, and thus he becomes free of blame. It is a warning to halt in time on the path of evil. Okay, no commentary. Line 2. Basically, it speaks for itself. It's just saying this is a warning. This is a little warning shot, right? We want to give you a little bit, right? A little bit of a punishment so you kind of get it that you need to stop, or else, you know what I mean? Okay. 6 in the second place. Bites through tender meat, so that his nose disappears, no blame. It is easy to discriminate between right and wrong in this case. It is like biting through tender meat. But one encounters a hardened sinner, and aroused by anger, goes a little too far, and the disappearance of the nose in the course of a bite signifies indignation blots out finer sensibility. However, there is no great harm in this because the penalty is such as is just. Shekel. Let's take a look at this. The penalty is said to be just. So that in this talk about having gone too far, there is not such thing as something being just and at the same time having gone too far. Let me explain. In ancient China, there was this custom that certain people who committed certain crimes of certain nature, and they knew that what was right and what was wrong to do. Right? And they knew that what was, okay, we're talking, right? Again, this is somebody talking, so sometimes it sounds a little weird. Right? You know, other times it's me messing up, but what? All right, they knew that they were supposed to, they knew that they weren't supposed to do what they did. The penalty was to cut off the person's nose. Oh my goodness. Thus brand them for everyone to see. So everyone would know this person is now branded for life. This man or this woman committed a crime of this category when it was fully within their power to do better. Of course, it would not work in the United States because the person would go to the surgeon for a nose job. Right? Anyhow, that was the thing in China. You did wrong when you could have known better, certain kinds of crimes. Stealing, raping, they would cut your nose off. All right? Okay. I should return to that to some degree. This seemed to be a very extreme thing to do, but it was just. That is what it means here. All right? No further commentary. 6 in the third place, third line. Text. Bites through old dried meat and strikes something poisonous. Slight humiliation, no blame. Punishment is to be carried out by someone who lacks the power and authority to do so. Therefore, the culprits do not submit. The matter at issue is an old one, as symbolized by salted game. And in dealing with it, difficulties arise. The old meat is spoiled. By taking up the problem, the punisher arouses poisonous hatred against himself, and this way is put in somewhat of a humiliating position. But since punishment was required by the time, he remains free of blame. Shekel. This is very too often familiar situation with many of you. You lack the power and authority to really punish your mate, but you must bring up this issue in which he or she is clearly wrong, and every time you do it, you get into it. They cuss you out, you have a big fight, the whole bit. This is what is speaking about in this line here. If you have to go through it, you have to go through it. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you got to do what you got to do, right? All right, 9 in the fourth place, text. Bites on dried grizzly meat, receives metal arrows. It furthers one to be mindful of the difficulties and to be persevering. Good fortune. There are great obstacles to be overcome. Powerful opponents are to be punished. Though it is arduous, the effort succeeds. But it is necessary to be hard as metal and straight as an arrow to surmount the difficulties. If one knows the difficulties and remains persevering, he attains good fortune. The difficult task is achieved in the end. Shekel. Whereas the third line, the person who has to carry out the punishment lacks the authority, that is not necessarily the case in line 4. In the fourth line, due to one's psychological relationship or whatever with the other person, one has the power to carry out the punishment. But it is a very difficult situation. The opponent is powerful, meaning very strongly entrenched in his or her wrongdoing and hardly receptive to your counsel and or admonitions, etc. It says it's necessary to be hard as metal and straight as arrow. This is still shut. To be hard as metal means two things. One, that you cannot be yielding, and at the same time, metal is the symbol of what we call earth in our tradition. It is a symbol of inflexible, clear logics. You must be logical, rational, reasonable, straight in your thinking, unyielding. You must not give in to the person. At the same time, you must be cold and dispassionate, meaning deal with the issues. Don't allow yourself to get caught up in name calling or dramatics, etc. when you deal with the matter. To be straight as an arrow means that the opponent will likely resort to tactics of counterpunching, counterattacking you through weaknesses, through your fallacies. And it might be something irrelevant, but that is the way the person's mind works. And you know that when you get in an argument with someone, it doesn't matter how irrelevant and irrational the point that the other person is making. The thing is to carry it in such a manner that they can't just make the point. You remain above their reproach no matter what the argument. Okay? All right, yeah. Okay. Back to the text, 6 in the fifth place. Bites on dried lean meat, receives yellow gold. Perseveringly aware of danger, no blame. The case to be decided is indeed not easy, but perfectly clear. I'm jumping the gun again. All right. Since we naturally incline to leniency. Okay, and then Shechem says, since the subject of this line naturally inclines to leniency. back to the text, must make every effort to be like yellow gold. Back to shekel. Meaning impartial, follow the golden mean. Start off with a neutral position. The person must be impartial, must start off with a neutral position, must always start off by observing the golden mean between things. The text. That is as true as gold, as impartial as yellow, the color of the middle, the mean. It is only by remaining conscious of the danger growing out of the responsibility we have assumed that we can avoid making mistakes. Back to shekel. Here, impartiality, equanimity is very important. This person here tends to be more lenient because it is the center of the trigram clarity, Li. It is a yin line, meaning when you get into perception, thinking as opposed to the lower trigram, which is that which carries out the punishment. When you get into philosophy of things, when you get into the philosophy of things, you tend to go a little too philosophical. Here too, you are admonished, you are reminded that you have to be impartial. You start out to think, you start to feel, so you are warned, the fifth line is to be impartial. Maintain your clarity and deal with the truth so that the lower lines can carry out what they must carry out. All right, back to the text. 9 at the top, 6th line. His neck is fastened to wooden canes so that his ears disappear. Misfortune. Shekel. This time the ears are cut off. Text. In contrast to the first line, this refers to a man who is incorrigible. His punishment is the wooden canes. His ears disappear under. Shekel. But actually in ancient China, they cut the ears off. Symbol of the man who does not listen. Ouch. Text. That is to say, he's deaf to warnings. This obstinacy leads to misfortune. Shekel. Obviously, you find in your relationships, for example, if you were not in a RSS society, for your relationship, you drew this 21st hexagram, you can't carry it out unless you are going to physically abuse your mate or take your mate to court. This hexagram requires a society, a community in which to manifest itself. We have in this community, for example, devised certain kinds of situations where in a number of situations we have deprived people of participating at certain levels or threatening them with expulsion from the community for their gross incorrectness in their relationships. In that respect, we are able, to some degree, to exercise some leverage to manifest the 21st hexagram, because that is just. It is not physical abuse or punishment, not necessarily that, but it requires some social leverage where there is something to be lost, to be lost. Okay. It requires an impartial and just means of applying that leverage. Many of you may not know it, but a number of good families who for the past 10 years, 11 years, that in the society have been in existence were resulted from the fact that many people have stayed in their relationship from fear of being expelled from the community because they realize that there are a lot of good things for them and for others. Through a society, they found a lot of good things for themselves and for their growth, for their health. They found a vehicle where they could accomplish many things for themselves and for others. If you have truly belief in having an alternative that in the Western world is that alternative to what the Western world is offering you, you would also need a society of people who are of like mind and like direction with you. And that means lots of people. But at the same time, we take the position that if we're going to have the privilege of exercising your expertise in this community, and you will have the privilege of enjoying your expertise, or the expertise of others in this community, you are going to have to be truthful to your family. You are going to have to be truthful to your family life, to your relationship, to your fundamental laws that regulate your interaction with other people in this community. So if you are not going to treat your husband or your wife right, then you cannot give up your expertise. Run it back. So if you are not going to treat your husband or your wife right, then you cannot give up your expertise. That is African law. A man, if he does not pass his puberty initiation, does not continue to uphold the laws of adulthood in his community, society. He cannot bear arms to defend his nation. That is universal in almost all African traditions. For the simple fact that traders are made of that stuff. Where do traders come from? They come from the ranks of those men and women who have not learned those cultural lessons of adulthood in society. That's where your traders come from. If you have not lived up to the basic foundations of in that society, family, etc., you have no right to own land, no right to work with others to establish wealth. Those are the weak links that destroy everything. In African community, we have to earn the right to enjoy citizenship and to enjoy the spoils of land and the resources of the community, the natural resources, by qualifying yourself, by showing that you have mastered some degree of your emotions, your lower part of yourself. Otherwise, you will use your wealth to abuse others. You will use your arms against others. You will betray them. As the Yi says, inferior men must not come to power. If they are needed, they must be paid off and sent away, but not given titles or positions. All right? We have the semblance of the same in this RSS society. Granted, it is wishy-washy, I understand that, but I have to make allowances for the fact that most of you walked in these doors the day after. You know what you did out there. Okay, the sugar, the salt, the marijuana, the coke, the speed, the bad food, the too much sex, the fast life, and the fast lane. You have wrecked yourself by the time you get here. Okay? People say, Shegum, you are not firm enough with these people. I say, I know, but do you know why? One day I will be, but I will decide when that time comes. In the meantime, I must, like the other hexagram says, bear the humiliation of people who don't understand. This is complex. This stuff is complicated. If we are back in ancient Kemet, we would not be talking about mantras given the state of your behavior. We would not be talking about mantras given the state of most of your behavior. We would just be dealing with non-occult stuff. But I have to weave it in here because it is an extraordinary time in history, and I have to foster and develop the most superior kind of health system. We will see in the RSS society, in time, a most fantastic health system to emerge from here. And I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not interested in your health for your health's sake. I don't care. I couldn't care less. Well, I could care less. I'm interested in your health for the sake of what you can do to help save the world. Because health for its own sake means nothing. Help the body so that the highest spirit can come and do its work on earth. I'm just talking to you for you to understand the dynamics, because we have a beautiful thing here, and many of you are very impatient. of course, not every man is born to be fully knowledgeable and involved in the direction of other people's lives, especially on a large scale. But even on scale 1, you have to begin to understand the complexities. This is extremely complex, this business of trying to guide you all. It is a beautiful experience for you all, for all of you. You have to learn to study, dwell on more of the positive things about you, and use that as leverage, because negative is only that which will sink you. Okay, in lecture. All right, pretty much. Yeah, he's straightforward, you know what I mean? He doesn't get too much into, you know, it was probably the end of the day too. He was probably a little tired. So he didn't delve too much. He gave it all up in the lecture he did before this one, because he was doubling up, you know, that type of thing. So he didn't talk too much about, you know, extra stuff, but, you know, yeah, this is, you know, a lot of the text pretty much spoke for itself. This is the application of, you know, justice, you know, the application of punishment. When, you know, crimes have been committed, etc., etc. All right, so that's it. All right, we will be back with Hexagram 22 another time. All right, so I'm going to say peace and love. We're going to do it again. Peace.